Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast from the land of the rising sun, Arunachal Pradesh. I'm Gaurav Sawant. Over the course of the next half hour, we will tell you about the latest friction between India and China at Yangtze in the Tawang sector and how India pushed China back, having learnt important lessons from Doklam in 2017 and of course Penghongsho in Galwan in 2020. India taught China a lesson that the People's Liberation Army of China is unlikely to forget in a hurry.
Border brawl raises tensions. Chinese troops bashed, kicked and chased. Bully Beijing schooled with fists. Sharp, aggressive lesson to China.
India sending out a firm message. We want peace, but we are prepared.
India's #1 war reporter at Tawang border. The full picture only on India First.
India Today is the only channel that will get you the inside story about how India taught China a lesson. The army taught the People's Liberation Army a lesson that it's unlikely to forget in a hurry. The only channel that will tell you how the Chinese soldiers were overwhelmed. They thought they'll come in numbers and they will be able to occupy one of the dominating features that they wanted to occupy, to be able to look into Indian territory. But Indian surveillance systems had ensured that they kept a hawk eye on the Chinese build-up. And when Chinese soldiers tried to climb, there were adequate number and more Indian soldiers who were present there who pushed the Chinese soldiers back, kicked them, hit them, pushed them. Of course, this after the provocation came from the Chinese side and marched them to misery. India Today's Shiv Arur, Abhishek Bhalla and I with this report.
December 9th, 2022, the India-China clash in Yangtze Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh. But this time, bully Beijing was schooled with full aggression. Overwhelmed and overpowered, the Chinese were chased away after a 25-minute clash. India Today has the full picture, the 17 steps of what actually happened.
This time the Indian army had intelligence about the gradual Chinese build-up and the Chinese move towards the higher reaches dominated by India. India had taken adequate measures in time. Not only were a larger number of troops deployed, but reinforcements were also called in. So the moment the Chinese soldiers came, they were overwhelmed by superior number of Indian troops and also the fact that Indian troops had better training and tactics for 17,000 feet altitude.
Indian troops rapidly summoned reinforcements that immediately surrounded and pounced on the Chinese. In at least 2 pockets, Chinese soldiers were beaten up badly and they began to retreat. Indian troops chased the Chinese troops. Some Chinese were even temporarily captured. A group of about 50 Indian army troops then aggressively approached the Chinese post, after which the Chinese fired warning shots in the air, totally unnerved. Indian troops stayed put on the Chinese side as a show of force and issued a warning, after which they returned back to the Indian side.
When fists flew, some Chinese soldiers tried to retreat. Their reinforcements came in. According to our sources, and this is unconfirmed, some Chinese soldiers were temporarily held captive. But then the Indian soldiers also chased the Chinese soldiers back to their camp. The Chinese thought they would be able to overwhelm or browbeat the Indians, but they were in for a rude shock. With Shiv Arur and camera person Yogendra Singh in Tawang sector, Arunachal Pradesh. Gaurav Sawant for India Today. Now, India is known for decades China cannot be trusted, especially after what happened in Doklam in 2017, Galwan in 2020, Peng So, and of course frictions that have taken place at multiple friction points even after that. At least 30 frictions have taken place, including the Yangtze point. But then the Indian Army is well prepared. The Indian Armed Forces are well prepared. The Indian Air Force is to carry out a major command level air combat exercise in this sector. While NOTAM has been issued for that, there will also be a missile test in the Indian Ocean region around the 16th of December. Very clear signals that India is sending out. From the Himalayas to the Indian Ocean, India is prepared. This instance, Indian UAVs had caught the Chinese build-up, and when China on the 9th of December tried to unilaterally change the LAC, they failed because not just Indian soldiers who were occupying those dominating heights, but those on adjoining heights were able to come down very heavily on the Chinese soldiers, and following the banner drill, they asked the Chinese to go back. When they didn't, there was an argument, there were fisticuffs, we are told from the periphery, stone pelting happened. For some time, some Chinese soldiers were also held by the Indian side just to send out a very strong message. And those who came in larger numbers were actually pushed back on the other side. The Indian Army was extremely firm, resolute and aggressive. More injuries suffered on the Chinese side is what sources tell India Today. While the Chinese soldiers went back on their side, according to some reports, the Chinese wanted to, they brandished their weapons, according to some information that has filtered out, subject to official confirmation. But on the 11th, there was a meeting between the commanders, and protocols once again adhered to bring down the tempers, to ensure peace and tranquility prevails in this sector. But does it? No. China has been aggressively patrolling in this area. There have been face-offs in the past, but skirmishes have happened along the sector post Galwan. Post May, June 2020, there have been about 31 skirmishes that have taken place. Chinese aggression is also visible in the Sikkim sector, as is the Chinese infrastructure build-up. But so is the Indian infrastructure build-up that is taking place all along the line of actual control, whether in Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, the middle sector, which is Barahoti in Uttarakhand, and of course eastern Ladakh. So India sending out a firm message: we want peace, but we are prepared for any situation. With cameraman Yogendra Singh in the Tawang sector, Arunachal Pradesh, Gaurav Sawant for India Today. Now, India Today now gets you satellite imagery to show you how China was building up and how India was keeping an eye on the Chinese build-up. This was happening for weeks. China thought it'll suddenly overwhelm the Indian army. It has tried these tactics before, including in this sector. It hasn't succeeded. But this time, not only had Indian army positioned troops at vantage points, and China wanted to occupy one of those vantage points to be able to look deeper into Indian territory. It was denied that opportunity, and India Today's Ankit Kumar now explains how India's surveillance advantage was a major setback for China.
In the icy heights of the Himalayas, a deadly clash between Indian and Chinese soldiers along the line of actual control. On December the 9th, in Arunachal Pradesh's Tawang sector, Chinese soldiers entered into Indian territory with a clear bid to alter the status quo. India Today has gotten you the clearest and most accurate visual representation of the likely flashpoint at Yangtze in Tawang. We've accessed high-resolution Planet Labs PBC satellite images from the day of the reported clash. And here's what you can visibly see. 1. A new Chinese road winding through the mountains can clearly be seen.
This is a high-resolution satellite picture captured by Planet Labs. It was taken exactly on the day when the clashes between Indian and Chinese troops happened. It all started with construction of a military village north to the LAC. As you can see, this is the new military village. There has been work undergoing for past several months now. Leading this village is a new wide road. As you can see, this is the new wider Chinese road that connects the Chinese military village to the forward locations right in front of Thangla Pass. Now what we have here on 9 December is a sizable presence, this is most important, a sizable presence of Indian troops just to ensure that what happened in June 2020 in Galwan would not repeat in December 2022 in Tawang, Arunachal Pradesh.
Now let's decode for you what these images confirm. The Chinese side tried to get a 17,000-foot vantage point on the day of the clash, but failed miserably. In the vicinity towards the east are the snow-capped strategic high peaks that go as high as 17,000 feet that many believe the Chinese army wanted to take control of. These uninhabited high points provide a vantage point to monitor developments towards the Tawang side in India. A new wider road leading towards the line of actual control and ending with a post-like location near the Thangla Pass can be seen, but did not show a Galwan-like overwhelming presence of Chinese military vehicles and encampments seen in Ladakh in June 2020. While India continues to have a permanent position near this location, new forward deployments likely anticipating PLA intrusions can be seen in this available imagery. Indian forces on the ground this time completely thwarted China's bid to grab Indian territory, and despite the terrain challenges, Indian personnel on ground ensured every Chinese soldier who stepped foot on Indian soil was pushed back with aggression and a warning. With Ankit Kumar in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
Yangtze in the Tawang sector in December 2022 was no Galwan of June 2020. India has learnt very important lessons, not just in terms of ensuring that there is no penny packet patrolling deployment and no trusting China. So Indian troops were there in large numbers. The Chinese troops could not overwhelm us. In fact, the Indian troops overwhelmed the Chinese soldiers, rounded them up, battered, chased them back to their camp, and were extremely aggressive at the line of actual control. Now this is a game of moral ascendancy at the LAC, which is the dominant army, which is the army that instills fear in the other camp. And this is exactly what India has succeeded in doing here at Yangtze, December 2022 in the Tawang sector.
India dominating on the icy heights of Tawang, Arunachal Pradesh, this time beating China at its own game, thwarting yet another bid to land grab. The Indian Army's upper hand can be explained via these high-resolution satellite images from the very clash spot in Tawang. Accessed exclusively by India Today, the images from the day of the clash show that Tawang was no Galwan, the other clash that it is being compared with. In June 2020, India was outnumbered in Ladakh's Galwan Valley by sheer numbers of intruding Chinese troops. In Galwan, India lost men despite inflicting serious casualties on the marauding Chinese after being caught unawares. But 2 years down the line in Tawang, Arunachal Pradesh, Indian forces were more than prepared, with advanced ground intelligence about possible Chinese escalation and readying a counter-ambush by quick deployment of reinforcements. So when the Chinese troops intruded, they were met with a ferocious fight back. This time it was the turn of the Chinese army to be outnumbered and overwhelmed. While in Galwan, Chinese outnumbered Indians, the tables turned completely in Tawang. In Galwan, China had ambushed the Indian side, but in Tawang, intelligence alerts ensured India was ready. While in Galwan, India lost 20 men and China at least 17 men, in Tawang, just 9 Indians were hurt compared to 22 Chinese. In Galwan, Chinese armoured vehicles provided backup, but there was no such luck for China in Tawang. While in Galwan, Chinese men had intruded, it was the turn of Indians to barge back into China in Tawang. In Galwan, troops from both sides were taken captive, but in Tawang, India captured 5 Chinese soldiers before releasing them a short while later during the skirmish. China was the aggressor in Galwan with stone pelting. In Tawang, it was Chinese verbal abuse and stone hurling which caused the trouble. Since Galwan, India has boosted troop deployments and boosted border infrastructure, including intelligence gathering, learning valuable lessons on how to defeat Chinese misadventures and also preempt them, thereby ending up giving the Chinese army another proverbial bloody nose. With Ankit Kumar in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
Chased and battered, China finally reacted to the situation at Yangtze in the Tawang sector. Not just the Chinese Foreign Ministry, but even the Western Theatre Command issued a statement conceding there was friction at Yangtze. China, of course, claims the aggression was from the Indian side and insists it was dealt with in a professional manner. Be that as it may, the fact remains this was neither the first nor will be the last friction between India and China. Analysts argue that friction will only increase as India's military, economic and diplomatic stature increases, and this has left China very worried.
December 9th. At an altitude of 17,000 feet in the Himalayas, 300 Chinese soldiers breached the line of actual control. Indian forces challenged the Chinese, leading to a hand-to-hand combat. Both sides suffer injuries in the clash. They disengage immediately after the initial clashes. This is the full picture of what exactly happened in Tawang, Arunachal Pradesh. Thankfully, there were no casualties. No weapons are said to have been used, unlike the Galwan clash. But chased and battered, China once again pins blame on India. The Chinese military, in a statement full of half-truths and blatant lies, claims Indian soldiers crossed the LAC illegally. Indian soldiers obstructed PLA troops, which triggered a fresh standoff. The Chinese response was professional. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin claimed the current situation is generally stable and asked India to abide by the spirit of relevant agreements signed by the two sides. This is not the first time when China stands exposed. A similar transgression took place in June 2020 when Chinese soldiers breached the LAC in Galwan Valley. 20 Indian soldiers were killed after the Chinese attacked them with crude weapons. They too suffered many casualties, which Beijing did not acknowledge. The clash in Tawang was different from Galwan. This time the Indian troops were prepared and gave it back to their Chinese counterparts the moment they were provoked. Bureau Report, India Today.
The Indian army successfully pushed the Chinese soldiers back from the line of actual control in the Tawang sector, but politically, The opposition has tried to put the Narendra Modi government on the mat. The opposition asked the government to come clean. Why did the government not speak of this incident on the 9th of December when it actually happened? Why did the government finally make a statement in Parliament only now? Defense Minister Rajnath Singh was very clear. China's unilateral attempt to change status quo at the line of actual control did not succeed. But the opposition says, why is it that China is repeatedly doing this, and why is it that government of India is not taking this up firmly with China? वो लाल आंखें कब दिखाएंगे is the point that opposition raises with the government. We bring you this report.
Entered into our territory. I am reading.
A clash that resonated through the corridors of power.
But please allow the opposition.
Opposition leaders walked out of both houses of parliament over the India-China clash at Tawang.
इंडियन मिलिट्री कमांडर्स के टाइमली इंटरवेंशन के कारण पीएलए सोल्जर्स अपनी लोकेशंस पर वापस चले गए। मैं इस गरिमामयी सदन को Arunachal Pradesh.
The defense minister's statement on Friday's flare-up didn't suffice. Indian troops may have pushed the intruding Chinese soldiers back along the mountain border of Arunachal Pradesh, but December 9 standoff gave the opposition sufficient ammunition to attack the Modi government when the parliament is in session. Congress led the offensive in and outside the house, accusing the central government of hiding facts about alleged Chinese incursions.
उन्होंने इस मसले को अपने ही तरीके से एक प्रचार लेने के लिए अपनी बात रखे और चले गए। ये देश के लिए अच्छा नहीं है। छुपाने के लिए क्लैरिफिकेशन नहीं दिए। जब क्लैरिफिकेशन को मौका नहीं दिए तब वहां बैठने में कोई अर्थ नहीं है। तो इसीलिए हमने ये तय किया कि सब मिलके प्रोटेस्ट करके वॉकआउट करना।
In addition to demanding a full-fledged discussion in Parliament, Congress leaders alleged that the BJP government at the centre deliberately kept the Friday clash under wraps because of political reasons.
हम पूरी तरह से सेना के साथ हैं। आज 9 तारीख को ये होता है हादसा, और क्योंकि गुजरात में मंत्रिमंडल का शपथ समारोह है तो सरकार छिपा के रखती है। जब कुछ चैनलों के पास आता है और चैनल जब इसको एक्सपोज करती है तब तक सरकार देश को बताती नहीं है। क्या ये रवैया है राष्ट्र की सुरक्षा के लिए?
Congress also charged that the ruling BJP had its focus fixed solely on Hindu-Muslim politics.
क्या संदेश जा रहा है देश भारत सरकार से कि जब भी चीन हमारे सीमा पर अपनी आंख उठाएगा तो हम उनके 2-3 ऐप्स बंद कर देंगे।
The Congress call echoed formally by the Aam Aadmi Party. Its Rajya Sabha member Raghav Chadha served a notice for the suspension of other business in order to enable a full discussion in the House on the alleged Chinese transgression. The Samajwadi Party also endorsed the demand.
संपूर्ण विपक्ष निराशा के चलते और किसी तरह के स्पष्टीकरण न होने की वजह से वॉकआउट कर दिया।
In a series of tweets, AIMIM leader Asaduddin Owaisi hit out at the Modi government for its handling of the China situation.
भारत की प्रधानमंत्री से अपील कर रहे हैं कि आप पॉलिटिकल लीडरशिप दिखाइए इसमें। चीन का नाम लेने से क्यों डरते हैं आप? क्यों डर रहे हैं आप? आपने तो उठकर जाकर मिला था बाली में चीन के लीडर से। अब देखिए क्या हुआ।
In response, the government criticized the opposition for not letting parliament to function. Home Minister Amit Shah instead targeted the Congress, recalling instances of China's brazen assertiveness when the UPA was in power.
जब उनकी सरकार थी तो 2006 में भारत में चीन के दूतावास ने पूरे अरुणाचल और पूरे नेपाल पर दावा कर दिया। 25 मई 2007 को चीन ने कांग्रेस के ही मुख्यमंत्री दोरजी खंडू को वीजा देने से इनकार कर दिया, क्योंकि ये तो हमारा ही हिस्सा है अरुणाचल। ये भी शोध किया गया क्या? 13 अक्टूबर 2009 को मनमोहन सिंह की अरुणाचल यात्रा पर चीन ने आपत्ति जताई और 2010 में चीन ने जम्मू कश्मीर के लोगों को स्टेपल्ड वीजा जारी करने की प्रथा शुरू की।
चाइना के इस प्रयास का
The government's stout defense notwithstanding, the opposition seems in no mood to relent on the China issue, at least for the rest of the parliament session. Bureau Report, India Today.
The fact remains, India has been very firm with China, right from Ladakh to Sikkim to Arunachal Pradesh and in the Indian Ocean. In fact, there will be a major exercise that the Indian Air Force will carry out in the Eastern Air Command. There's also likely to be a major missile test, all aimed at sending out a very clear message. India Today will continue to report from Ground Zero. That is all that camera person Yogendra Singh and I have for you from the Tawang sector in the special broadcast. Many thanks for watching. News and updates continue on India Today. Stay with us.